We tend to think of Abraham Maslow's approach as a theory about needs, but it's actually a theory about motivation. And once you get this distinction, you can better understand what motivates us as human beings and how we grow and how we develop. This is the heart of the humanistic approach, humanistic psychology. Welcome to The Art of Therapy, Season 3, Episode 9.
It's good to be back here with you in our studio, and we just explore the art of therapy even further today.
Yes, I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah. So just to check in our last episode, so we really explored behavior therapy and just understanding how psychological distress can be understood, but also treated through learning. And that we specifically looked at operant conditioning and how a person's behavior can be altered through consequences and reinforcements as well. And then, of course, understanding how anxiety can be lowered actually when a feared stimulus or feared situation, when that is actually paired with relaxation as well.
Yeah, wow, to think that development was really one of the first major treatment developments for anxiety emerging here from South Africa, based on reciprocal inhibition and desensitization, and still in use today. It's quite something.
It's come a long way, and
Yes.
we still use it. That's how meaningful it is.
Yes.
So then the question is: Are there unique qualities to the human being that help us to understand how we relate and how we overcome difficulties?
Yes, this is key, because what we've been looking at together is that there had been, in the psychodynamic approach and the earlier psychoanalytic, very strong emphasis on early childhood and very specific drives, aspects of functioning that have a significant effect on the individual, often unconscious in their present environment. And that was just what it highlighted, was how important that can be. And then when we look at behaviorism, what we see is something really hopeful in terms of the capacity for learning. And as you noted, just as we began now, reinforcement and aspects that relate to reinforcement, punishment. But this is enabling to be so specific and applying this. But it's just important to recognize that a lot of the work done in behaviorism was based on animal studies. And yes, there's a great deal that can be learned and generalized from animals as it relates to patterns of learning, which is quite something. But the next development, is there something beyond learning? Is there something that beyond early experience, often unconscious, that really can help us to understand human beings? And so, of course, yes, it is the focus on human beings.
Yes.
And what's often understood or referred to as the humanistic approach, or specifically humanistic psychology, and it effectively being the third force that coming after behaviorism and the psychodynamic approach.
Sure. It's actually beautiful to see how it just shows how complex human beings are. He said one approach can't explain all of our human beings.
Yes, there's no one size fits all. And just as we think we've got it, we've got a complete explanation, a complete overview. We realize, but there's more. So each time we recognize this and we learn, we are building a model and an understanding of how we relate and functioning that's ever more complex and more versatile for the uniqueness of each and every one of us.
Just beautiful to hear. So if we just go into, maybe if we can explore humanistic theory then, and just have a look at that and where it started.
Okay. Well, let's kick off with the founder, the said founder of humanistic psychology, Abraham Maslow. And what Abraham Maslow really did was he began to look at healthy individuals, high-functioning individuals. He looked at individuals like Albert Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, and he, and in this process, looked at, well, let's look at this. What do they have in common? Even Abraham Lincoln. What are some of the traits? What is it that's unique about these human beings? What's unique about a human being? And so it was a very different approach where he's moving from behavior and learning and early unconscious processes and starting to look at what is it about the human spirit? What is it about the human being? And so he began to understand an altogether different side, which is a human being that is ultimately good, orientated around doing good, being positive, a human being that is orientated around growth. We know how much of our lives we're seeking to grow, to develop. Just seems inherent in us. And then he reflected on the quality of being the most that one can be, the absolute most in one's life. And we've reflected on this when we spoke about Carl Rogers, and very, very closely aligned, because Carl Rogers also part of the development of the humanistic approach or humanistic psychology. But with Abraham Maslow, this focus on actualization and the human being being the ultimate of what they can become. And in looking at it this way, he begins to show us an altogether different reflection of a human being, of the person.
It's beautiful to hear that, and it just shows it's a complete different perspective, and it's understanding the growth and, like you said, the self-actualization.
Yes.
And it just makes me think, even as a baby, you progress and you move forward from the one skill to the next skill. So it's always been there.
Yes, we have to develop, we have to grow, we have to challenge ourselves and become more of who we are. It's just part of it, from, as you say, from when we're babies. We just keep growing, developing, challenging.
Yes. Yeah. So I think if we know Abraham Maslow, he's such a known figure in humanistic theory. Maybe we can still go and have a look, what is the different aspects of the growth, and what do we need for that to happen?
Yeah, so there's a lot known about his really key paper in 1943, where in this paper, which he called A Theory of Human Motivation.
not animals.
Not animal motivation, human motivation, a theory of human motivation. He set out some of the tenets of his approach and his thinking, but what is really well known today, which is the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And he set out this, in effect, a pyramid, as a scheme for how we can think about needs. But there's a lot known about it. Let's explore that in a moment. But his work is often focused on that, but there's so much more to his work. And really, what his work began to introduce is an understanding today that would often be considered positive psychology, that what he was looking at, let's look at the strengths of an individual. Let's not just look at illness or pathology. Let's look at the strengths. Now today, we, in a sense, take it for granted. We just think now of strengths, really play to someone's strengths, and limit movement towards a weakness or limitation. But really, he put the spotlight on looking at the strengths of a person, the human being. And he began to consider what is motivation more strongly. What underlies that process? And he tied it very, very closely to growth and actualization. This process of striving towards, of moving towards, of becoming more. And so really we see with his work really emphasizing motivation and human motivation. And he set out that the basis for human motivation has to do with our needs. And that when we have unmet needs, those needs, unmet needs, energize behavior. We move towards. And when needs are satisfied, it enables us to reach for higher order goals and aspirations. But it really shows us the importance of needs, unmet needs, and how that positively energizes behavior.
It actually pushes people forward of having that unmet needs.
Yes. And so really, we know psychotherapists that anytime there's a strong emotion or behavior, we know we can go back and there's going to be some unmet need. And it's really a part of this is Maslow's his conceptualization of needs and how it motivates us positively. But too, how our needs are arranged hierarchically. And this is, and really we're now talking about his hierarchy of needs. He wasn't setting this out in any absolute way. He was really guiding us to think about needs in terms of, are they all on the same logical level? Or can we think of them or group them in ways that help us to categorize and understand how they relate to motivation, what motivates, what drives us? And so here in his model, he set out that there are 5 levels. And the first level, the base level of that pyramid being physiological needs. And that these needs relate to just air, oxygen, water, food, things like immediate survival. Those are absolutely essential. And it's hard to conceptualize of how can we be busy with other things when we're busy trying to survive.
Psychotherapy is not only a profession, it's a state of being. And for that, it requires continuous learning, training, and refining your skills. If you would like to become better in your role as a psychotherapist, come and join Dr. Warwick Phipps for in-person training at Treatment Work Center, where you will experience training like never before from a thought leader and expert in psychotherapy. If you would like some more information on our training or to book a training session, please visit the link in the description. And also, if you find these podcast episodes meaningful, please subscribe to The Art of Therapy. It's literally our basic needs. That's what we need for survival.
Very much. And so he identified that these basic needs need to be met. These are our survival needs.
Okay.
Yeah. And once we've met our survival needs, now we can go to needs that relate to security. And if one just thinks about how would you just think about it when you think about that?
What it makes me think is that it's really safety, and it creates a safe space to be able to function and to do more than just survival.
Yes, exactly. That's really what he was getting at when he's looking at safety and security, but safety in terms of that secureness. And what is it, things like that one has a stable income, a place of one's own. Some aspects that we immediately gravitate to just for our personal sense of security, that consistency, that when these security and safety needs are met, that enables us to reflect and strive and begin reflecting on other needs. So the way you conceptualize it very simply is this pyramid or this hierarchy, with the lower needs being more the D or deficiency needs.
Okay.
And so the principle being that it's really difficult, if not impossible, to reach most of the time for higher order needs when those basic needs, first of all, are physiological and survival needs, and then more the security and safety, often more psychological. That one can't really easily reach beyond that until those are established and met. And what he would say then is that if someone is really struggling with consistent income, or a place to live, for instance, that's consistent, constantly relocating, unsure of where the next paycheck is coming from, things like that, an individual can become preoccupied and just coping with that. Or if an individual is faced with terrible circumstances, war, dire poverty, they're just trying to survive. And so how do they reach beyond that? Now, of course, we're going to learn that there were certain exceptions to that. And of course. But really what he was getting at is ways of thinking about how we approach needs. And so, yes, our physiological, and then at next level, security, safety needs.
It makes so much sense, because it literally is like the pyramid. It's that first level and the second level that's really needed. You almost have to go through every level, and those needs need to be met to actually be able to reach even further. Yes. Otherwise, like you say, there's exceptions, but that is what's first needed. Otherwise, it really makes it hard, actually.
That's it. Without that, it's really difficult to reach, really difficult to think of other possibilities.
If those two are met, what is next then?
Well, what he recognized is you could think of those two as really physical, a physical survival, and then to a large degree, psychological safety, security. And once those are met, those physical, psychological levels 1 and 2, now one strives for something else. And here, what he identified is that need for love and belonging. He really showed the importance of connection, that desire for partnership, that desire for friendship, for intimacy, being with another, being in a community, essentially that sense of belonging.
It just shows it that when your basic needs are met and your physical needs with regards to income, then you can move on, okay, just really wanting that connection.
Yes.
And relating to other people.
Yes, yes. And it is more abstract. It has to do with how we feel, how we experience ourselves, being with, and that sense I'm part of something. I'm and that's important, and I belong. I fit.
You have your space.
Yes, yes, very much. And he emphasized it gave it, and looked at it so carefully that he effectively said that many of our psychological difficulties that we encounter in life come from a lack of belonging. That yes, we can meet levels 1 and 2, but often if we're struggling for that sense of belonging, being part of, that we again can find that underscores a number of our difficulties. So that sense of belonging, absolutely essential.
And if that is in place, then you can actually do so much more. Because if you have a place where you belong, if you have a place that's safe, and you have those first needs met, then you can just really move.
Yes. And this is where he was, it was so thoughtful in the way, and smart the way he thought of it, because it takes us to the next level that he identified, which really has to do with esteem. And he looked at esteem in two ways. Respect from others, but from others, not in a vacuum. So yes, that sense of belonging, connection with others. And then naturally, well, not once one has belonging, what are some of the experiences one wants to have with others? And so what he showed in terms of that sense of esteem, and specifically respect from others, being valued, appreciated, recognized, seen. Those qualities are important to us as human beings. And that was the one part. But he didn't just leave it at that. What he also noted was in our own esteem, our own respect for ourselves. It comes from competence, doing things well, growing, mastering. And that builds the way we feel about ourselves. And that being our own esteem and contributing to self-esteem. But he just got it, that once we've got our belonging and our place, now what? And yeah, it all relates to our esteem and how we feel in these relationships, both the respect from others and the respect that we have for ourselves.
I think you splitting the esteem into two parts, I think that's such an important part as well, because it's in relation to others and being respected by others, and then respecting yourself in a sense.
Yes.
And I think those two combined, it's actually so important to see that it's both parts of that.
Right, yes, because they fit together. Well, we know that, and even in ourselves, that there's situations where we can experience respect for others, but there's some doubt in ourselves, or we feel a lot of respect or feel confident in ourselves, but we're troubled by some reaction by those who we really connect with. Both go together, and they're essential.
So if we then meet the esteem part, what next?
Well, once we have the sense and we experience not only belonging, but we know we're respected, valued by others, and we feel confident and we respect ourselves. Well, now what? And now, really at the top of the pyramid, we have the big growth engine, which is this desire to be the best we can be, going beyond simply esteem in the way we feel about ourselves, but becoming more of ourselves in the world, in the environment, reaching and fulfilling our absolute best, the most of our potential. So actualization.
And that's where we all strive towards. That's how can we go through all of these different levels to reach that.
Yes. And that sense of becoming in this moment the best of who I am, which is never absolute or finite. Just as I experience becoming more of myself, or you experience a profound expression of yourself, there's joy with that. There can be ecstasy, meaning that these moments, and then there's more.
And then there's more. It never ends.
No. And it's our action in the world. It's what we're doing, who we are, how we're creating. And this is what he had really understood around actualization, that creativity that comes from actualizing, that sense of joy or completeness in that moment, that decision, because a lot of the time it's free will, it's our choice. When we experience becoming the most in this moment of who we are, who we can be.
It's not doing it perfectly, it's just living from moment to moment and actualizing in that moment.
Yes.
But then the next one, there's another moment and another one.
Indeed.
I think with his contribution means so much, because it's really understanding the growth and the motivation. and that people really want to move through these levels or need to move through these levels most of the time.
Yes.
Yes.
This is really what it is. And it's so profoundly thinking. That's why it's influenced so many things today. One just looks at learning and schools, education. This and his thinking introduced a child-centeredness, and moreover, attending to the strengths. So positive psychology, we see this in children and education, in many of the wellness programs, in corporate business, really strength-based, inherent potential of the individual. Much of self-help draws on these principles and shows one how to approach things in a very meaningful way. It just underscores enormous developments in the field and in our society in which we live.
Mm-hmm. It sounds amazing to be able to understand that, and it really gives the direction of where human beings always move towards.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think with Abraham Maslow, he had such a profound contribution to the humanistic approach. And I know we've previous seasons we talked a bit about Carl Rogers, and we've looked at both of them independently. But I'm also wondering, how can they be integrated? How can they fit together?
Wow, yeah.
Yes.
Now you're talking. Because seen independently, there's a contribution here, and very valuable each. But it's really when we start looking at them together, that brings something altogether new. So yes, let's do so.
Okay. Maybe let's pause that for now, and then the next one we can really have a look at how they fit together.
Yes, let's take a breather for now.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on The Art of Therapy. If you found this episode meaningful, or if it expanded your knowledge, we would love to hear from you in the comment section. We are looking forward to continuing this journey with you. Until our next episode.